Hi guys, Nada here from Techtesters and welcome back to our channel. Hello from Taipei this time because we are here for Computex 2019 and as you probably noticed, my voice is absolutely terrible because I've been talking non-stop for the last 7 days, I think. So being here is absolutely wonderful. It's a bit hard on our feet, but we still made it, and we've seen many interesting things that we're gonna share with you in the next few weeks, I think. So we're gonna make several videos, several theme videos with all the interesting things we've seen, starting with pretty much the star of the show, which is AMD and all the X570 motherboards, which we're gonna do today. So stay tuned and let's begin. We would like to thank Aorus and Cooler Master for making this Computex coverage possible. Now, as I've already said, the AMD, it was pretty much the center of attention, this whole Computex, and it started off the first day when Lisa Su had a keynote speech, and she talked about pretty much the two things we were anticipating. The first one was the new Navi GPUs that are supposed to be really strong in that mid-range segment, so it was supposed to compete with the RTX 2070, outperforming it for a better price. Which sounds really good, but there was no real information. There was like just one benchmark shown, and she said that more information will be available at the E3 event. The second thing that we've been expecting so much in the last few months is definitely more information about the Zen 2 CPUs. So that is the third generation of Ryzen CPUs. And she promises a lot of things with this new 7nm CPU. So she said it's going to have at least 15% more instructions per clock with a better clock speed and lower power consumption, again at a very, very good price. So she said that their new 12-core CPUs are going to come at the price of $499, which is going to put a lot of pressure at Intel's i9-9900K. We also got a press release saying that they're going to release a Ryzen 5 lineup that is going to reinforce their already strong domination in this mid-range segment. Now, of course, a lot of questions still remain unanswered. For example, what are going to be the all-core boost speeds? What is the overclocking performance? And the big one, is there going to be a 16-core CPU? Nothing was announced yet. I think maybe AMD is waiting for Intel's answer to their 12-core CPU that's being released now. We will know about that soon, I hope. But the thing that everybody was expecting the most and was very much glad to hear is that we finally have a date. The Ryzen CPUs, the third generation of Ryzen CPUs, will be released on the 7th of July. So there is only a bit over a month left till we finally get the CPUs in our hands and actually see the real performance. Now let's talk about the new motherboards that are based on the new X570 chipset. They said it's going to be over 50 motherboards released, so there's going to be a lot of benchmarking come July, but that's okay, we're going to do it anyways. The main improvement on these new motherboards is definitely the new PCI Express Gen 4 that has more bandwidth, and it's going to make possible to see some new faster SSDs and probably some GPU improvements in the future as well. So that is great news. Now, as you will probably see, a lot of motherboards have an active fan on top of that chipset because the new chipset draws a bit more power now to be able to handle these higher speeds. Now, we did ask both Gigabyte and ASUS if there's going to be, for example, a 0 RPM mode or a hybrid mode, but they did say that that is not currently in the planning. Now, let's get on to the new Gigabyte Aorus lineup and see what they have to offer. Their main focus for this X570 lineup was definitely the VRMs, something they did for their Z390 lineup as well, and they got a lot of praise within community for that. A lot of motherboards previously were used to save up on the VRMs and use cheaper ones, but that is not something that Aorus did this time, and even their most basic model is going to have 14 phases, so 12 plus 2, that is going to handle easily even the 12-core CPUs, and then even with some overclocking. So the most basic one is the Aorus Elite, And the next one in line is the X570 Aorus Pro, which improves the VRMs as well as the PCB a bit. And I think it's probably going to be the crowd favorite because it's going to have a great balance between performance, price, and looks. After that, we see the Aorus Ultra, which is going to add the Wi-Fi 6 and mostly have a tiny bit of a sleeker design. And above that is the X570 Aorus Master, which takes the similar design and again improves the VRMs even further with a direct 14-phase design to really push the CPUs to the limit. Their showpiece this Computex was, as expected, the new Aorus X570 Extreme, which is actually one of the few X570 boards without an active fan on it, and there is a reason for that. More than 85% of this motherboard is covered by some kind of a heatsink, cooling the chipset, the direct 16-phase VRMs, and the M.2 SSDs, with a ridiculous amount of metal. It weighs more than any other board we know. Now, I have to say that it looks absolutely fantastic, and they did not say anything about pricing yet, but I do fear it just might be out of reach for pretty much everyone but the richest PC enthusiasts. Now let's talk about the ASUS motherboards, and they are staying true to their lineups as well, releasing a bunch of Pro, Prime, Tough, ROG Strix, and ROG Crosshair motherboards, and this time they are also focusing on the VRM design, moving away from doublers, though we haven't seen any specifics for each motherboard yet. Now, another focus on the ASUS motherboards is definitely the Optimum 3, which is going to allow you to run higher memory clock speeds on ASUS motherboards, more than on the previous generations and more than on the competing motherboards, which sounds very interesting. And they showed an example that you should get like around 200 megahertz more if you are running an ASUS motherboard, but we are yet to see that in practice. Although we're waiting to see some more technical details on the majority of their boards, they do really look great. And we see them using OLED displays again in more high-end units, as well as the Node connector to integrate the displays on some upcoming cases. We didn't get a chance to go over the entire MSI and ROG lineup yet to hear all the details about their plans for the new AMD platform, but going over the booths, we've seen some pretty recognizable names with some updated designs and of course the active cooling. Now, MSI showcased the Gaming Plus, Gaming Edge, and Gaming Pro Carbon models, and they'll be launching two really high-end options, the Godlike and the Prestige Creation. Now, we do expect to hear more about the MSI motherboards at the European event that's going to be somewhere prior to the AMD launch, and then we're going to know a bit more about them. Keep in mind that the most board partners still didn't have enough time to play with the actual new generation Ryzen CPUs, so I do expect to see some improvements and maybe some more tweaking in the next couple of weeks. One thing that was particularly noticeable is a complete lack of micro ATX boards, and we did ask why, and at every vendor the answer was the same: there is just not enough demand. But they do have ITX boards. So, for example, Aorus had their Pro ITX motherboard, ASRock has their Phantom Gaming ITX motherboards, and ASUS came up with their Strix ITX, as well as the Impact motherboard. And they all have very different designs. I'm actually a big fan of ITX motherboards, and it's going to be really fun to put these motherboards head to head and see how they actually perform. Now, as for backwards compatibility, meaning that is your new generation Ryzen CPU going to work with your old Ryzen motherboards as AMD promised it should? We actually didn't get any details about the B350 and X370 motherboards, which is a bit of a concern, but also kind of obvious as, again, partners did not have that much time to play with the actual CPUs yet. But I do believe if you have an older motherboard with a bit of a decent VRMs, there should be no problem as long as you download the new BIOS update. You would still want decent VRMs for the high-end model CPUs, but it is really good to know that if you're not interested in PCIe Gen 4, B450 and X470 motherboards are going to be very capable and very affordable options for your new CPU. And if you're wondering about the compatibility with the memory modules, we've talked a lot with the designers from ASUS actually about that, and they said that the X570 motherboards have a huge range of memory modules that are going to be compatible with, something that you would expect to see on Intel motherboards. So it's very, very good. And it looks like the Ryzen is finally maturing with their Zen 2 architecture. I'm very, very excited to say this. That is all for today for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you in the next one. Bye.